Your kids just don't really fit the kind of trips we're planning anymore. She said it with a soft smile, the kind people use when they think politeness can hide the shape of what they're actually saying. I nodded the way I always do. Calm. Agreeable. My daughter was standing to my left, holding a paper cup of lemonade she hadn't touched. My son was beside her, quiet in that way children get when they realize something important has just happened, even if they don't fully understand it yet. I set my hand lightly on his shoulder. Of course, I said, my voice even. I understand. And I did. I understood exactly what she meant. My name is Tige Monroe. I work in luxury vacation property management. I spend most of my days reviewing contracts, managing bookings, and noticing details most people overlook. Patterns, especially. The kind that don't announce themselves all at once, but reveal who someone is if you give them enough time. My sister-in-law Amanda has always believed she's very good at making decisions for everyone. She organizes the trips, picks the destinations, sends out the group messages with just enough warmth to make everything feel inclusive, even when it isn't. Especially when it isn't. The first time my kids weren't included, she said it was a numbers issue. Too many people, not enough rooms. The second time, it was timing. You know how busy it gets with school schedules. The third time, she didn't explain at all. She just sent photos afterward. Smiling faces. Matching outfits. Everyone standing in front of a house that looked rented for the weekend. I remember my daughter looking at one of those photos on my phone. She didn't ask why we weren't there. She just handed the phone back to me and said, "They look happy." I told her they did. That was true too. I've learned not to correct children when they notice something accurately. Today was supposed to be another one of those conversations. Casual. Harmless on the surface. Amanda standing in my kitchen, running her fingers along the marble countertop like she was evaluating it. She does that sometimes. Touches things that belong to other people as if she's deciding their value. It's just easier this way, she continued, her tone light, almost apologetic. Traveling with kids changes the whole dynamic. I poured her a glass of water. It does, I said. I handed it to her with a small smile. It makes people think about what actually matters. She laughed softly, missing the weight of the sentence entirely. She always does. My brother stood a few feet behind her, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. He rarely does when Amanda is speaking. It's a system that works for them. One talks. The other avoids. I've never needed to interrupt it. My children stayed close to me. They didn't speak. They've learned that part from me. Silence is not weakness. It's information. It tells you who feels comfortable enough to say certain things out loud. Amanda took a sip of her water and set the glass down. Anyway, she said, glancing around again, we're finalizing plans for next month. Just a small family getaway. Nothing complicated. I nodded once. That sounds nice. And it did. I don't begrudge people their vacations. I just pay attention to how they build them. Who they include. Who they don't. And what they assume they can still take from you after drawing that line. 3 days later, I was at my desk reviewing incoming reservations when a new booking request came through. The property caught my attention immediately. Oceanfront. 4 bedrooms. Private access. Clean lines. Quiet location. It's one of my highest demand listings. I opened the request. Guest name, Amanda Carter. I read it once. Then again. Dates matched the trip she had just described. Number of guests, 8. Special request note, family vacation. Prefer privacy. No extra occupants. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence settle around me. It's a habit I've developed. When something important reveals itself, I don't rush past it. I look at it from every angle. The same person who had just explained, gently and reasonably, why my children didn't belong on family trips, had just booked my beach house for hers. I clicked into the property file. Ownership details. Documentation. Everything exactly where it should be. My name at the top. Tige Monroe. Sole owner. I closed the file and returned to the reservation screen. My reflection stared back at me faintly through the monitor. Calm. Composed. The way people expect me to be. I confirmed the booking. Sent the standard approval message. Your stay has been successfully reserved. Please let me know if there's anything you need to make your trip more comfortable. I paused for a moment before adding one more line. I'll make sure everything is prepared exactly the way you expect. I hit send and folded my hands neatly on the desk. Outside my office window, the afternoon light stretched across the street in long, quiet lines. People were walking. Talking. Living their lives without realizing how often small decisions turn into defining ones. I don't interrupt those moments. I let them complete themselves. Amanda had made her decision. Now it was my turn to honor it properly. I do not rush when something reveals itself. I let it breathe. I let it settle into place until it becomes clear what it really means. That afternoon, I pulled up the full reservation details again and read every line carefully. Check-in time. Check-out time. Guest count. 8 adults. No children. The note about privacy repeated twice in 2 different sections. People rarely repeat themselves unless they are trying to make something very clear. Or hide something behind clarity. I opened the internal calendar and blocked out the adjacent dates. A small adjustment. Nothing unusual. High-demand properties require careful spacing. At least that is what I would say if anyone asked. Then I forwarded the reservation to my operations manager, Daniel. He has been with me for 3 years. Reliable. Detail-oriented. The kind of person who understands tone without needing it explained. I typed one sentence. Please prepare the Carter booking personally and follow the special instructions exactly. I paused, then added, no assumptions. Only what is written. Daniel responded within 2 minutes. Understood. That was all I needed. I closed my laptop and walked into the kitchen where my children were finishing their homework at the counter. My daughter looked up first. Are we going somewhere next month? She asked. Her voice was careful. Hopeful, but not too hopeful. Children learn how to manage expectations when adults around them make patterns easy to recognize. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. Not this time, I said gently. We have something else planned. She nodded like she had expected that answer. My son did not look up. He kept writing, pressing the pencil a little harder than necessary. I placed my hand lightly over his and softened the pressure. We will go somewhere better, I said quietly. He stopped writing for a moment, then continued, slower this time. Okay, he said. That night, after they went to bed, I returned to my office. The house was quiet in that clean, still way it gets after 10 o'clock. I pulled up the property again, not to check the booking this time, but to review the access protocols. Entry codes. Backup keys. Service schedules. Every system in that house is designed to run smoothly without attention. I designed it that way. Efficiency is a form of control. I updated the primary access code. Standard procedure between guests. Then I created a secondary access restriction tied to occupancy limits. Another standard feature. Rarely used. It requires the guest list to match the approved count. No more. No less. I saved the changes and documented them in the system. If there is one thing I have learned in my line of work, it is that everything important should be written down before anyone has a reason to question it. The next morning, Amanda called. She does not usually call me directly about bookings. She prefers to operate at a distance, where things feel less personal. Her voice was bright when I answered. Hi, Tej. I just wanted to make sure everything went through smoothly. I smiled even though she could not see it. It did, I said. Your reservation is confirmed. The house will be ready for you. There was a brief pause. Perfect, she said. We are really looking forward to it. It has been a while since everyone got away together. Everyone. The word sat there between us. Clean. Complete. Excluding exactly what it was meant to exclude. I am sure it will be a lovely trip, I replied. My tone did not change. It never does. She hesitated again, then added, and thank you for being so accommodating. I know these places book up fast. I glanced at the calendar on my screen. The blocked days surrounding her stay sat there quietly, creating space she had not noticed. They do, I said. That is why planning ahead matters. She laughed softly. You have always been so organized. It is part of the job, I answered. It helps avoid misunderstandings. Another small pause. Then she shifted the conversation. Light topics. Weather. Travel times. The kind of details people use when they want to keep things comfortable. I let her. There was no need to rush the moment. After the call ended, I sat back in my chair and looked at the reservation one more time. 8 adults. No children. Privacy requested. No extra occupants. I repeated the details in my head the way I do when I want something to stay precise. Words matter. Especially the ones people choose when they think no one is paying attention. I closed the file and turned off the screen. Outside, the morning had fully settled in. Cars moving. Doors opening. Lives continuing in predictable patterns. Inside, everything was already in place. I had not changed her plan. I had simply made sure it would unfold exactly as she had defined it. There is a specific kind of silence that happens when people are asked to define something they assumed would remain vague. It does not sound like panic. Not yet. It sounds like hesitation. Careful choices. Amanda sent the names one by one. I watched them populate the system in real time. Hers first. Then my brother. Then the others. Each entry confirmed. Each detail locked into place. 8 adults. Exactly as requested. No more. No less. 10 minutes passed before my phone rang again. This time, her voice was different. Still controlled, but tighter around the edges. Tej, she said, I just want to make sure we are not missing anything. I leaned back slightly in my chair, letting the moment stretch just enough. What do you think you might be missing? I asked. There was a brief pause. It is just that the system keeps repeating the occupancy notice, she said. It is a little strict. I smiled faintly. It is precise, I said. There is a difference. Another pause. Longer now. I could hear movement behind her. A door opening. Someone asking about dinner plans. Life continuing in the background while something more important sat quietly between us. Right, she said finally. It is just that we might have a couple of adjustments later. Nothing major. I did not answer immediately. I let the word adjustments settle. People use soft language when they want flexibility without accountability. The system is built around what is submitted at check-in, I said calmly. Changes can be made, but they need to be approved. Approved, she repeated. The word caught slightly. Yes, I said. It helps maintain consistency. Silence again. Then a small exhale. Of course, she said. That makes sense. It did. It always does when explained that way. We ended the call shortly after. I set my phone down and turned my attention back to the screen. The guest list sat there, complete and verified. 8 names. No space for anything else. That evening, I did not check the cameras. I did not need to. The important part had already happened. They had defined their boundaries. Clearly. Precisely. And I had accepted them. The next morning, I woke early. 6:15. The house was still quiet. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the light come in slowly. There is something about early mornings that makes everything feel more honest. Less performance. More reality. At 8:23, my phone buzzed again. A system notification. Attempted access override. I set my cup down and picked up the phone. The log showed a secondary entry request. Additional user input. Denied. I opened the camera feed. The front door came into view. Amanda stood just outside, her expression composed but focused. Behind her, a couple stood with overnight bags. I did not recognize them immediately, but that was not unusual. Extended networks. Friends who become part of the trip. It happens often. Amanda turned slightly, speaking to them. Her tone was reassuring. Controlled. It is just a system thing, she said. It will go through. She entered the code again. The panel lit up. Processing. Then the same message appeared. Occupancy limit reached. Additional entry requires authorization. I watched as her posture shifted just slightly. Not enough for most people to notice. But enough. She tried again. Same result. The couple behind her exchanged a glance. Quiet. Polite. Waiting. Amanda stepped aside and pulled out her phone. I did not answer immediately when it rang. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then I picked up. Good morning, I said. Her voice was different now. Still polite, but with an undercurrent that had not been there before. Hi, Tige. We are having a small issue with the entry system. What kind of issue? I asked. It is not recognizing additional guests, she said. We have 2 more people arriving. I nodded to myself even though she could not see it. Yes, I said. That would be outside the current reservation. There was a pause. Short. Controlled. It is just 2 people, she said. They are with us. I understand, I replied. But the system only allows what has been confirmed. Silence. Then, carefully, she said, we thought there might be some flexibility. I leaned back slightly, letting my voice remain even. Flexibility depends on how things are defined at the beginning. I let that sit for a moment before continuing. You were very clear about your preferences. Another pause. This one heavier. Right, she said quietly. We just did not expect it to be this exact. I glanced at the screen again. 8 names. 8 confirmations. No more. No less. Exact can be helpful, I said. It removes confusion. I could hear the shift now. Not frustration. Not yet. But something closer to realization. Is there a way to add them? She asked. The question was careful. Measured. There is a process, I said. It requires approval and an adjustment to the reservation. Okay, she said quickly. That is fine. We can do that. I nodded once, even though she could not see it. I will review the request, I said. In the meantime, the system will continue to operate as it is currently set. I ended the call before she could respond further. Not abruptly. Just cleanly. I placed the phone down and looked out the window again. The light had shifted higher now. Stronger. Clearer. Inside the system, everything remained exactly where it should be. Outside, people were beginning to understand what that meant. There is a point where people stop asking questions and start asking for permission. It is subtle. You hear it in the way their voice softens. The way their words become more careful. Amanda waited 23 minutes before calling again. I noticed the time because I always notice timing. It tells you how long someone thinks they can manage a situation before they need help. I answered on the first ring this time. "Hi," I said. Her tone had shifted again. Less confident. More measured. "Tige, I submitted the request through the system," she said. "I just wanted to follow up." I opened the dashboard in front of me. The request was there. 2 additional guests. No details filled in yet. Just placeholders. "I see it," I said. "It is incomplete." A pause. "Incomplete," she repeated. "Yes," I said. "Full names are required. Identification verification. Standard procedure." Silence. Then a slight inhale. "Of course," she said. "I will get that." I did not respond. I let the quiet sit between us until she ended the call herself. 10 minutes later, the names appeared. 2 entries. First and last names filled in. I read them once. Then again. Not family. Not immediate relatives. Friends. That was not the interesting part. The interesting part was that she had not mentioned them before. Not in the booking. Not in the call. Not in any of the details she had been so careful about earlier. I clicked into the request and reviewed the full reservation again. 8 adults. No children. Privacy requested. No extra occupants. Words matter. I approved nothing. I let the request sit. At 11:42, she called again. This time, she did not wait long. "Tige," she said, her voice controlled but tighter now, "we are still locked out for the additional guests." I leaned back slightly. "That is because the request has not been approved," I said. "Is there an issue?" she asked. The question came quickly. Too quickly. "There is no issue," I said. "There is a process." Silence. Then. Carefully, she said, "Can we move that process along?" I let out a small breath, not loud enough to be heard as anything but calm. "Before I do that," I said, "I just want to make sure everything aligns." Another pause. Longer this time. "Aligns?" she repeated. "Yes," I said. "With the original reservation." I could hear voices behind her again. Someone asking if everything was okay. Someone else suggesting they could just wait. Amanda lowered her voice. "It does align," she said. "They are just joining us for the weekend." "I understand," I replied. But the reservation was submitted with specific parameters. I stopped there. I did not need to repeat them. She already knew. That was the difference now. Before, she assumed. Now, she remembered. "We did not think it would be this strict," she said. There it was again. That word. Strict. People use it when something holds them accountable in a way they did not expect. "It is consistent," I said. "It treats every reservation the same." Another pause. Then, a shift. Small, but clear. "Tige," she said, and this time my name sounded different. Not casual. Not distant. More direct. "Is there a reason this is being handled differently?" I did not answer immediately. I let the question sit long enough for its weight to settle. Then I spoke evenly. "It is not being handled differently." I paused, then added, "It is being handled exactly as it was defined." Silence. This time, it held. No background voices. No movement. Just quiet. I glanced at the screen again. 8 confirmed guests. 2 pending. System unchanged. "We are all here together," she said finally. It would just be easier if they could come in. Easier. Another soft word. I rested my hand lightly on the desk. Easier for whom? I asked. The line went still. Completely still. For a moment, I thought she might not answer. Then she did. For everyone, she said. Her voice was quieter now. Less certain. I nodded once, even though she could not see it. I see, I said. I let a few seconds pass before continuing. When you made the reservation, you were very clear about what would make things easier. I paused again. Just long enough. Privacy. No extra occupants. I did not raise my voice. I did not change my tone. I simply repeated what had already been said. That is all it takes sometimes. A mirror. Silence followed. Heavier now. Not confusion. Not hesitation. Something closer to recognition. That was different, she said carefully. It was about planning. So is this, I replied. The words landed cleanly. No force behind them. They did not need any. I watched the request screen as the two pending names remained unapproved. Waiting. Just like the moment between us. What do you need from me? She asked finally. The question was simple. Direct. It had taken her several calls to get there. I appreciated that. I leaned forward slightly. I need clarity, I said. The kind that is written, not implied. Another pause. Then, quietly, she said, I understand. And for the first time since this started, I believed that she might. Understanding is a quiet thing. It does not arrive with noise. It settles. It changes the way someone speaks before it changes what they say. Amanda did not call again right away after that. That told me more than anything she could have said. People who truly understand something do not rush to respond. They adjust first. At 12:31, the system updated. The pending request was modified. I opened the file and read it carefully. The two additional names were still there, but now there was a note attached. Requesting approval for extended stay guests. Willing to adjust reservation terms as needed. I read the sentence twice. Not because it was unclear, but because it was precise in a way her earlier messages had not been. Words matter. Especially when they change. I leaned back in my chair and let the moment sit. This was the shift. Not the conflict. Not the denial. The recognition of structure. At 12:35, my phone rang again. I answered on the second ring. Hi, I said. Her voice was quieter now. Not weaker. Just, measured differently. Tige, she said, I updated the request. I saw that, I replied. There was a pause. Then she continued, I wanted to make sure everything is aligned with your system. My system. That was new. I nodded slightly. It is a good start, I said. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Just careful. Is there anything else you need? She asked. The question came clean this time. No soft edges. No assumptions hidden inside it. I appreciated that. I turned slightly in my chair and looked out the window. The afternoon light had settled into a steady, even tone. There is one thing, I said. I could hear her shift on the other end of the line. Not tense. Just attentive. Go ahead, she said. I let a second pass before speaking. I need the reservation to reflect exactly who this space is for. Another pause. Then, slowly, she said, it is for our group. I did not respond immediately. I let the word group sit there, vague and unfinished. Then I spoke again, gently. That is not what you said before. Silence. Heavier now. Not confusion. Something closer to awareness pressing against something else. Before, was different, she said carefully. I rested my hand on the desk. Different how? I asked. There was movement on her end. A door closing. Voices fading into the background. She stepped somewhere quieter. Before, I was trying to keep things simple, she said. For the trip. I nodded once, even though she could not see it. Simple is useful, I said. When it is honest. Another pause. Longer. Then she exhaled softly. I see what you are saying. I did not interrupt. I let her finish the thought in her own time. I should have been clearer, she said. The words were quiet. Not performative. Not defensive. Just accurate. I leaned forward slightly. Clarity is what the system runs on, I said. Without it, things get complicated. She let out a small breath. Yes, she said. I understand that now. I opened the reservation file again. 8 confirmed. 2 pending. All names filled. All details present. There is an adjustment fee, I said calmly. And an update to the occupancy agreement. That is fine, she replied immediately. No hesitation this time. I paused, then added, and the terms will reflect the actual use of the property. Another brief silence. Then, steady, she said, that makes sense. I studied the screen for a moment longer. Then I clicked approve. The system updated. Instantly. 10 confirmed guests. Access expanded. Restrictions adjusted. Everything realigned to match what was now clearly defined. It is done, I said. I could hear the subtle shift on her end. Relief, but quieter than expected. Not celebration. Just resolution. Thank you, she said. I nodded once. Of course. I ended the call and sat back in my chair. The system was quiet again. Stable. Balanced. Exactly the way I prefer it. Outside, the light had shifted slightly, moving toward late afternoon. Inside, everything had settled into place. Not because anything had been forced. But because it had been named. Clearly. Precisely. And that is the part most people do not realize. The system never creates the outcome. It simply reflects what people choose to define. And Amanda had just finished defining hers. Some shifts do not announce themselves. They appear in the space between what was said before and what is said next. That evening, I did not check the system immediately. I let time pass. Enough for the house to settle into its new shape. Enough for the people inside it to adjust to the version of reality they had just agreed to. At 7:12, my phone lit up with a notification. Not an alert. Not a problem. Just activity. Doors opening. Lights adjusting. Movement through the main living area. I opened the camera feed and let it run quietly. Amanda stood near the kitchen island, speaking to the group. Her posture was composed, but there was something different now. Less performance. More awareness. She gestured lightly as she spoke, explaining something. I did not need to hear the words to understand the tone. People speak differently when they know the structure around them is real. My brother stood nearby, listening. Not distracted this time. Present. That was new. One of the additional guests moved toward the glass doors, looking out at the ocean. He paused there for a moment, taking it in. That part never changes. The house always does what it is supposed to do. It reminds people of value. Not just financial value. Something quieter. Something that makes them slow down. I turned off the feed and set my phone aside. The moment had already said what it needed to say. Around 8:40, my phone rang again. I recognized the number before I picked up. Amanda. I answered on the first ring. Hi, I said. Her voice was calm. Not tight. Not hesitant. Just steady. Hi, Tige, she said. There was a small pause, then she continued, everything is working perfectly now. I leaned back slightly. I am glad to hear that, I said. Silence followed, but it was not empty. It was the kind that comes before someone decides whether to say something they had not planned to say. The house is impressive, she added. I smiled faintly. It is designed to be, I said. Another pause. Then, more quietly, she said, you have built something very specific here. I let that sit for a moment. Specificity tends to reveal things clearly, I replied. I could hear a shift in her breathing. Not discomfort. Just thought. It does, she said. There was movement behind her. Voices. Laughter. The sound of glasses being set down. Life continuing. But her voice stayed focused. I wanted to say. I appreciate how you handled everything today. I did not answer immediately. I let the words settle. Appreciation is easy to say. Understanding is harder. You are welcome, I said finally. She hesitated, then added, I realize now that I should have approached this differently from the beginning. I turned slightly in my chair, looking out into the dimming light outside. Approach matters, I said. It shapes what follows. Yes, she said. Her voice was quieter now. It does. There was a longer pause this time. Then she spoke again, slower. I did not think about how it would feel, from your side. I did not correct her. I did not expand on it. I let her say exactly what she meant to say. Perspective tends to arrive after structure, I said calmly. Not before. She let out a small breath. Not frustration. Something closer to acceptance. That makes sense, she said. Another voice called her name in the background. She turned slightly away from the phone, responding briefly, then came back. I should get back, she said. Everyone is settling in. Of course, I replied. Then, after a small pause, I added, enjoy your time. There was a brief silence. Then she said, we will. And for the first time since this started, it sounded like she meant something slightly different than before. The call ended. I placed my phone back on the desk and sat there for a moment without moving. Outside, the light had faded into that soft evening tone where everything looks quieter than it actually is. Inside the system, everything remained exactly where it should be. Clear. Defined. Balanced. I did not need to check it again. I already knew. The house was not just holding them. It was reflecting them. Every choice. Every word. Every boundary they had set. And now, for the first time, they were beginning to see it too. The next morning did not rush in. It arrived slowly, the way clarity usually does after a long day of adjustments. I woke before my alarm, the house still quiet, the air carrying that early stillness where nothing has started yet but everything is already in motion. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, not opening my laptop right away. There was no urgency. There rarely is when things are already aligned. At 8:07, my phone vibrated softly. A system notification. Not an error. Not a request. Just activity. I opened it and watched the timeline scroll. Doors opening. Movement through the kitchen. The back deck sliding open. The rhythm of a group settling into a place they had just begun to understand. I tapped into the camera feed for a moment. Amanda stood outside, looking out at the ocean. She was not speaking. Not moving much either. Just standing there. That was new. People like Amanda are rarely still unless something has shifted inside them. My brother stepped out beside her a few seconds later. He said something I could not hear, and she nodded. Not the quick nod she usually gives. Slower. thoughtful. He leaned against the railing. They both looked out at the water. I turned off the feed. I did not need to watch more. The important part was not what they were doing. It was how they were doing it. Around 9:30, my phone rang. This time, it was my brother. That was unexpected. He does not usually call me directly about anything related to the house. I answered after a brief pause. "Hi," I said. His voice was quieter than usual. Not hesitant. Just different. "Hey," he replied. There was a small pause before he continued. "I wanted to say thank you." I leaned back slightly. "For what?" I asked. He exhaled softly. "For letting us use the place. For handling everything." I did not respond immediately. I let him continue. "Amanda told me what happened yesterday," he said. "About the system. The guest list." I nodded once, even though he could not see it. "It is all part of the process," I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he added, "She said you were very clear." I allowed a small smile. "Clarity tends to help," I replied. Another pause. Then he said something that took a second longer to land. "We should have been clearer too." I did not interrupt. I let the sentence complete itself. "About everything," he added. His voice was steady. Not defensive. Not dismissive. Just honest in a way I had not heard from him before. "That is usually where things begin," I said. There was a longer silence this time. Not uncomfortable. Just real. "The kids," he said finally. The word sat there for a moment before he continued. "We did not handle that right." I rested my hand lightly on the table. "No," I said quietly. "You did not." There was no edge in my voice. No accusation. Just fact. He did not argue. That was new too. "I know," he said. I could hear something shift in the background. A chair moving. A door opening. Life continuing around him while this conversation stayed still. "Amanda wants to talk to you later," he added. "About that?" I nodded once. "That is fine," I said. Another pause. Then he said, softer, "They should have been here." The sentence was simple. But it carried weight. Not just about the house. About something else. Something earlier. I did not respond right away. I let the silence hold it. "Maybe next time," I said eventually. He let out a breath that sounded like it had been sitting there for a while. "Yeah," he said. "Next time." The call ended shortly after. I set my phone down and looked at the table in front of me. My coffee had gone cold. I did not drink it. Outside, the morning had fully settled in. Cars. Moving. Neighbors stepping out of their homes. Ordinary things. Inside, something less visible had shifted. Not in the system. That part had already been adjusted. In the people connected to it. The house had done exactly what it was built to do. It did not change anyone. It simply reflected them back to themselves, clearly enough that they could not ignore it. And now, for the first time, they were starting to respond to what they saw. Not with excuses. Not with distance. With acknowledgement. Quiet. Measured. Real. I stood up and walked to the window, resting my hand lightly against the glass. The light outside was steady now. No longer shifting. Just present. There are moments when everything becomes simple, not because the situation is easy, but because the truth has finally been named. This was one of them. And it was not finished yet. She called me that afternoon just after 3. Not late. Not rushed. The kind of timing that suggests someone has thought carefully about when to speak. I answered on the second ring. "Hi," I said. Her voice was steady, but different from before. Not controlled in the way people perform composure. Controlled in the way people choose their words because they understand what they carry. "Hi, Tige," Amanda said. There was a small pause, then she continued. "Do you have a minute?" I glanced out the window. The light had softened again, moving toward evening. "I do," I said. Silence settled briefly, then she spoke. "I wanted to talk about something that is not about the house." I did not respond immediately. I let her continue. "Yesterday made something very clear to me," she said. "And this morning made it clearer." I rested my hand lightly on the desk. "Go on," I said. She took a breath. "Not sharp. Just measured. When I said that your kids would make things complicated, I thought I was being practical." The sentence landed exactly where it needed to. No softness around it. No attempt to reframe it. Just the truth as she had said it before. I did not interrupt. "But standing in that house," she continued, "watching how everything worked, how nothing moved unless it was defined, I realized something." She paused. I could hear the faint sound of the ocean behind her. Wind moving through an open space. "I made them an afterthought," she said quietly. The words were simple. They did not need to be anything else. I leaned back slightly in my chair. "Yes," I said. No edge. No emphasis. Just confirmation. She did not argue. That was the difference now. "And I expected you to still make space for me," she added. Another pause. "Without asking." I closed my eyes for a brief second, then opened them again. "You did," I said. Silence followed. Not empty. Not heavy. Just honest. "I am sorry," she said. The words came without hesitation this time. No qualifiers. No explanations attached. I let them sit for a moment before answering. "I hear you," I said. There was a shift on the line. Subtle. But real. "I spoke to the kids this morning," she continued. "I called them." That made me still for a moment. Not because it surprised me, but because it mattered. "They were polite," she said softly. "Kinder than I expected." I allowed a faint smile. "They usually are," I replied. She exhaled quietly. "I told them I would like them to come next time. Not as an addition. As part of the plan." I did not respond right away. I let the words settle into place, the way I always do when something important is said. "That is a better place to start," I said finally. There was a pause. Then she asked, carefully, "Will there be a next time?" I looked out the window again. The light had shifted lower now, stretching long across the street. "That depends on what next time looks like," I said. She did not rush to answer. That told me she understood the question. "Clear," she said after a moment. "Defined." I nodded once. "Then it is possible," I replied. Silence followed, but it was not uncertain. It was settled. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For not making this bigger than it needed to be." I let out a small breath. "I did not need to," I said. "You already defined it." There was a faint sound of movement on her end. A door closing. Voices in the distance. Life continuing again. "We are leaving tomorrow morning," she said. "I wanted to tell you before we go." "I appreciate that," I replied. Another pause. Then, softer, she added, "The house is not the most valuable thing here." I smiled slightly. "It never was," I said. The call ended shortly after. I placed my phone down and sat there for a moment without moving. Outside, the last of the light was settling into evening. Inside, everything was quiet. Not empty. Just complete. I stood up and walked to the window, resting my hand lightly against the glass. There are moments when people think resolution is something you give them. It is not. It is something they arrive at when they finally see what they created clearly enough to change it. I did not need to raise my voice. I did not need to explain anything twice. I simply let the structure hold. And in the end, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It showed them that what you leave out does not disappear. It waits. Until the moment you need something back. And by then, the only thing that matters is whether you are willing to name it honestly. Because in the end, clarity is not what fixes things. It is what reveals who is ready to.